one of the things that I'm very focused on in joining the company is thinking about not just, how do we get the next 50, but, how do we go from 50 to 250 over the next few years?
Thanks for joining this episode of Go-to-Market Excellence. My name is Dan Quirk, host of the show, and I'm joined today by Mike Weir. Mike is Chief Revenue Officer at G2, the world's largest tech marketplace where businesses can discover, review, and manage their technology. Every single month, 5.5 million people and more visit G2.com to research over 100,000 software vendors across 2,000 categories, and they read over 1.5 million customer reviews. I've used it many times myself. It's an awesome site. As for Mike, he has a rich history in B2B tech, having held sales leadership roles at LinkedIn and before that, marketing leadership roles at CDW. We're honored to have him on Go-to-Market Excellence. Give it up for Mike. Mike, welcome to the show.
Yeah, thanks so much, Dan. Excited to have the conversation.
Yeah, for sure. We're going to talk a lot about a lot of different things today. But let's start with this. So you joined G2 last year as Chief Revenue Officer, shortly after the company crossed the $50 million threshold, $50 million in revenue. And I recently heard, I was having a conversation with Sangram from Terminus, and he said that only about 0.04% of SaaS and subscription companies ever hit 50 million. So you're at a company that hit 50 million. Take us behind the curtain and talk for a minute about how what a company at that stage. What were the challenges you were brought in to tackle for a company at that stage?
Yeah, I've heard like 1 in 20,000, so it sounds about right. Like this is rarefied air. We're really excited to be where we're at, having broke 50 million in ARR. We've got a clear market fit, and one of the things that I'm very focused on in joining the company is thinking about not just how do we get the next 50. But how do we go from 50 to 250 over the next few years? And to do that, I've got to focus a lot with my leadership team, with my peers on the executive leadership team, on what does our long-term vision look like, and doing a lot of refinements to that planning. And so that's one of the first things that we focused on. We revised immediately what the 3-year plan looked like when I joined. And so we started from a revenue perspective, but then worked into what is the platform vision, how are we going to increase our buyer value to have people using G2 on a regular basis, to then corresponding to how are we going to bring our clients into these conversations, into these buyer journeys that we're creating for millions of folks around the world right now. And setting that discipline about here's the 3-year vision has to be immediately followed with a very regimented business planning process, where we then work with varying levels of our leadership team across the organization to have them be a part of what does the next meaningful 12 months look like. It's great to paint the vision of where we want to be 3 years from now, but if we don't do an exceptional job of operationalizing that vision over the next 6 months, 12 months, we could be off track. And we want to make sure that we connect the dots on that long term with the short-term operational planning, and we bring increasing amounts of the company into that planning process so that everybody's aware of where we want to go and rowing in the same direction.
That sounds like a huge initiative to tackle, and obviously it happens for different companies at different stages of revenue, but it sounds like you guys might have been in that transition mode from scrappy startup to established scale up, and you're trying to put in the infrastructure so that you guys can grow really quickly and do that. So talk about the transition and maybe from a culture perspective that you had to bring to take the company from that startup scrappy mode to scale up.
Yeah, so team and the culture is extremely important to myself. I think that's one of the gifts that I've been given in my career is my 2 previous stints before G2 were very people-focused companies. LinkedIn has a well-documented, amazing culture that they build across the organization, but CDW as well. It was a coworker-first culture. And that's something that stuck with me about how much it meant to me. And so at G2, we've been expanding upon how are we going to help prepare everybody in our company to be their best at their job right now? How do we help them prepare for what their ideal next peak is? As we talk about it, with peak being our culture attributes. It's like, what is that ideal job that you want a year from now, 2 years from now, 3 years from now? And we want to set up process, we want to set up support systems that help people develop as a great AE right now, if that's the role you're in. But if you really want to be in management, or if you are thinking about transitioning over to being a CSM, we want to help do some of that skill mapping. We want to help understand where do you have gaps in experience and knowledge that while you're being an amazing AE, we can help you fill those gaps and progress in your career. So that was one of the first things that we started digging into really meaningfully, and created peak development plans that we ask everybody in the company to complete, share it with your manager, share it with your executive leadership team, so we know the direction that you're going as an individual, and we can support that. And if we do that across the whole company, then it ratchets up into how do we want to be there to support the G2 community, all of our existing employees, all of our alumni employees, to make sure that they're continuing to thrive within their careers. And selfishly, would love to get the most out of folks while we have them here, but we know people are going to move on, and we just want to help be a part of that process and create a great alumni network of folks.
Yeah, for sure. So it wasn't just about creating more structure on the go-to-market processes and the engine, but it's also about creating processes for each individual to help them advance. And you feel that those two things together have are going to position you guys for great growth as a company?
Absolutely. Yeah, if our team isn't high performing, if they're not happy, then from a revenue organization, it shows up in every client conversation that we have. It shows up in every partnership conversation. So we do want to make sure that our team is loving their job, is loving their G2 experience, and then that shows up very positively as they're engaging in the market and with our client base especially. And so we certainly do focus a lot on the G2 community and on the personal development of folks within the company.
Mm-hmm. And of course, you coming in your role at this stage in the company, you're trying to bring more structure, you're trying to bring more diligence, but you don't want to do that and then create a bunch of wasteful or red tape that slows everybody down and creates a bunch of bureaucracy, right? So what's the balance that you're trying to strike with that? You're a year in, so I'm sure you have some examples you can share about how you're trying to strike the balance between bringing more rigor but not bringing the bureaucracy with it.
Yeah, I'm not a fan of bureaucracy. So we are very, very keen to keep the entrepreneurial spirit alive. It's definitely one of our peak attributes. To me, I think they can coexist, but we need to understand that the process that we put in place is more about ensuring that we're doing early planning to allow for people to place bets, to people to take the risk, and encourage them to be able to voice what should we be doing differently, but not do it always in the kind of semi-unstructured way that was happening before, which had been causing confusion, which was causing potential misalignment. As we're scaling our organization, we're creating more and more specialized subject matter expert teams that have to be a part of execution, that have to be a part of some of these ideas being developed. Whereas, as a scrappier startup, just have an idea and execute it yourself. It's like you're interdependent on other teams now. And so we just created structure in the planning process. So people knew, like, when these really big ideas were percolating, like, you knew you had to go out and start working with the groups that would be instrumental in saying, yes, I agree with this. Yes, I will help execute this. Yes, we have budget for this. Like, you're selling that in, and then you're coming in, to the planning sessions and saying, all right, for our SMB client base, here's what we're going to do differently. Here's how we're going to partner with our product team on this particular idea that 50% of our clients have been bringing up that we want to solve for. And here's why we're introducing a net new role. Here's why we want to go into hiring in a new market. And so the entrepreneurial spirit is alive and well within that. We're just giving people a bigger voice and a platform to share across the company. Here's what we're betting on to help move our business forward over the next 6 to 12 months.
You hinted at a couple of examples, but can we drill down into any specific example that comes to mind?
Yeah, I think these operate on like big and small scales. So one small idea, which was what you would see at kind of any startup, is got an idea, pitch it to the 2 or 3 people, and say yep and move on it. One of the things that we've historically not done at G2 that was brought up with myself and Mike Harness, who runs our AMER region, shortly after I had started, was we have a lot of prospects that we're talking to and having conversations with who are really interested in the content of G2. But traditionally, we always start by focusing on helping them build their customer advocacy, and then eventually get to them using the content. But we have opportunities where prospects already have clients who are organically sharing reviews and posting on G2, and hey, they're showing up amazingly in grids, and they want to help showcase that. What about just going and talking to prospects about the content they've already qualified for? We're like, well, that makes total sense. We can help our clients. We can help them show the industry that their clients love them, that they're highly sought after, well positioned within their particular category, and showcase their value to the marketplace better. So absolutely, let's go test it. And that was like a 2-day decision that was completely counter to the way we had sold to prospects in the past. So that's one of those like micro decisions, really fast ones. Like, hey, this isn't going to break the whole system. We're not interdependent on a lot of other teams within the company. But in bigger motions, we use a leadership planning process where my segment leadership teams present every 6 months on what's my annual plan, and then middle of the year, it's like, what's my refresh? Here's what's working, here's what's not working, this is what we're going to be adjusting. And it's in those big meetings where we have products, marketing, engineering, support, finance, legal, like literally every cross-functional team is represented within there, where they're presenting their V2 MOM objectives and the bets they're placing. And so it's in those points where we'll have revenue leadership teams talking to product about, here's a new feature that we need to build. One of them was we saw an opportunity to help a lot of our mid-market and enterprise clients better represent their product suites. And so the idea came from our enterprise leadership team that said, hey, we've got some really amazing, groundbreaking companies that we're working with who don't just go to market on a product by product basis. They actually go to market based on the suites of product. So these 6 products ratchet up to a suite or a cloud or whatever vernacular you prefer. But we can help differentiate and show to the market how an Oracle Marketing Cloud compares to a Salesforce Marketing Cloud. And that would be really differentiating. Our clients would be excited about it, and our buyers would be even more excited about it. And so that's like a bigger example where we needed products, engineering, and multiple teams to get bought into it. And it was surfaced during some of this planning process.
So in this planning process, you have segment leaders on your revenue team. So mid-market, would that be a segment? Or are you talking, what are the other segments? Are they region-based? Are they size of client-based?
It's both. So our EMEA team would present, our Asia-Pacific team would present. In Americas, it would be SMB, mid-market, enterprise, so forth. So each of those teams has the opportunity to showcase what's going on within our part of the business and what do we need to do to better support our customers and help create opportunity for G2 in the future.
Yeah. And so did you have to provide them the framework? I mean, for lack of that's a general word, the Excel model that they were to plan inside of?
Yeah, we do. I think there's a lot of schools of thought on this. Yeah. I come from a school of thought that I want to provide the starting point for my leadership team, but I don't want to heavy hand this. I want the team to have flexibility to adapt the template that we provide, but they've got to have the core facts and they've got to have the core questions that are on my mind and others within the business to really guide their thinking and to make sure that some of the most important and poignant questions are answered.
Like what?
So in some instances, it would be things like, in EMEA, it's like, should we be adding people in Paris or Berlin, Munich, Amsterdam? Like, should we be hiring people in local markets to better support clients in those areas? It's like, hey, this is a question that's on my mind. I want you as the EMEA leadership team to think through, what's the value, what's the trade-offs to us, and come up with, is this something we should be doing or not? And so every single segment that presents has a similarly structured template. There are different target metrics based on where their part of the business is at. And there's different prompts or questions that we put out to them that says, hey, this is just, some of it's thought starters, some of it's very specific things that I need you to address. Right? Like, hey, if we're seeing an issue with churn in a specific customer type, I've got to know why. Like, why are we seeing this issue? What can we do to better support those customers to get our gross retention to where it should be at?
Mm-hmm. And so this starting model that you provide, each segment leader based on the size of companies that they sell to or the unique differentiators of their market, they are obviously going to have to tailor it in a certain way. I guess I'm curious, does this model that you provide them take into account different go-to-market motions that might be unique to enterprise versus SMB, or does G2 have not that much variation in terms of the actual go-to-market process, like the customer journey? You can see what I'm getting at, SMB versus enterprise. Is the customer journey pretty much the same, or is it so different that you need to account for that in the planning process?
Some of it is different, right? I think the time that it takes to make a decision is different. The types of G2 products that folks usually start with versus kind of grow into using, that's also can be very different. And so we give them the core facts. Like, hey, what does your current product mix look like? What do we ideally wish it looked like? We talk about what does the average customer spend look like, and what do we wish it looked like? And so we're kind of giving a lot of the data points that help the team start drawing conclusions for themselves. And then it's really that go-to-market motion that we're asking them as the experts in the business on their client type, on their customer base, to come back to us and tell where do we need to change process, where do we need to add to our tech stack or other things that can help you be more efficient and be more effective at helping your clients be successful with G2. And so we don't over dictate, how does your motion have to be different? We're just giving them a lot of the facts that they can then come back and tell us, how do we as a business, how do we need to have to flex to meet your needs in supporting enterprise clients differently than we would support SMB clients? That's part of the balance where we want to really empower the team to leverage their expertise and tell us where we need to flex versus giving them too much direction and kind of pigeonholing them into specific solutions.
Yeah. Interesting. So you guys do this 2 times per year, one annual and one
2 times per year. And then in between there, we have business reviews. We actually have our next business review on Thursday, where we're just looking at the performance of the business. We're revisiting those core facts of, hey, here's where we hope to be, where are we actually at? And just talking through that, again, very openly. So this is not a segment by segment meeting with just the senior leadership. It's my entire global leadership team plus cross-functional leaders all in the room, hearing the same information, having an open conversation about how are we doing helping our SMB clients or helping our APAC clients to succeed.
That's super cool. So I'm going to ask you to go even a level deeper, just because I'm curious of behind the scenes. So those meetings that you just described, how do they start? You guys, is it all you guys build slide decks and you just go through decks? Do you use like a BI tool that you start with a dashboard in the BI tool and then go from there? How do you start the meetings and draw focus to the areas that need attention?
Yeah, this is it's a really big partnership with my revenue operations team. Mm-hmm. So this is really where we look at and expect our revenue operations team to be a core part of our go-to-market motion, and honestly be a team that keeps us accountable to whether or not we're succeeding against the objectives we've set. And if I were to rewind this all the way to the beginning, which we're now very much in our FY23 planning process already, the revenue operations team partners with myself to set the baseline expectations. And then those become the core metrics that we hand out to each of the segment leadership teams that they then factor into, what are my objectives for the year within my V2 mom? What are the incremental asks that I have of the business? Like, if you want me to deliver that much revenue and that much customer happiness, like, here's the incremental headcount I need. Mm-hmm. Here's the new, investments that I need. Here's the new operating expense budget that I need to be able to support my team, my talent's development to do what you're asking us to do. And then they also have cross-functional team asks. Like, I would need product to help fix this one issue that my clients have been calling out. I need marketing's help to raise more awareness for this prospect universe that we're having a really hard time talking to. And so there's underlying data that the revenue operations team brings to this process that sets the foundation. And then at a business review, we're literally just connecting the dots to say, okay, we set these targets across a lot of different variables. Like, how are we pacing against them? What is some of the color commentary that we've been hearing in our weekly CRO leadership meeting call, in our weekly forecasting calls? Like, if we have color commentary, the RevOps team is bringing that in and saying, all right, we're ahead here. And from what we've been hearing from the pre-work we've done talking to the enterprise leadership team, we believe we're ahead on these metrics because of these three things. And so that is, partly to one, validate, which, they do a great job already kind of pre-wiring with the segment leadership teams to make sure that there's no like crazy gotchas in there.
Yeah.
And to get a lot of the background and make sure they're aligned on their opinions. But it's also highly educational for all the other segment leadership teams to gather that insight from. It's like, oh, like, you guys are succeeding because you're doing these two things. I'm not doing those. Mm-hmm. Maybe we should bring that to mid-market. Maybe we should start implementing that in EMEA. And so there's a lot of those facts, a lot of that discussion. It's very RevOps led. I work on the core metrics. I work on the template with them. I'll provide questions that I have that I've heard other leaders in the business bring up with me as things that get brought into it. But revenue operations drives that conversation with myself and the leadership team so that we have a bit of them holding us accountable and pushing us, but also partnering with us on what the business is telling us and what we can learn from as a collective group.
I'm going to ask you more about RevOps in a bit, but one more thing a couple more questions on just like your the infrastructure and everything you put in place. So for CROs who might be listening to this, or sales leaders who want to be CROs, and they're not quite at G2 scale, they're not quite at that 50 plus million scale, what would you advise them to focus on earlier that you had to come in and kind of like put in place? So you had to come in and put it on place after you guys passed 50 million. What kind of infrastructure would you advise people to put in maybe sooner than they had previously thought they would have to?
Yeah. One that I would definitely recommend, and you need to have some stability in your revenue. You need to kind of have confidence in some of your product market fit on this one. But one of the first things that we worked on outside of the 3-year revenue plan is working with the revenue operations team to put together our own pacing model so that we can help provide how the history of a individual and a team level performance should be factored into forecasting. Because like most companies, as you're scaling, you're really just reading the pipeline and saying like, okay, well, my pipeline shows that I've got $1 million in here, and typically I close 80% of that, so I'm going to give you an $800,000 forecast. Well, every single week that pipeline keeps going up, and then your forecast keeps going up, and then by the end of the quarter, for a CRO level person, if I'm aggregating 30 different teams outlooks like that, I could say, I could go to our CEO and the board and say, all right, it's the first week of the quarter and I'm committing to $10 million, but then all of a sudden by the end of the quarter I'm committing to $30 million, and they're like, you clearly don't have a command of your business. You don't know where it's going. So the immediate thing we put in place was, I want to look at the history of the reps and the teams and know what is the normal pattern of pipeline development, what does the normal pattern of close rates look like, and use a pacing model to, from week one, predict where is my business going to be. And now, thankfully, there's so much technology that's been developed in like the revenue intelligence and revenue operations side of the house, that a lot of this is being built into the native platforms, which is huge for all of us. So if you're early on, if you're, you got good product market fit and you're getting into a scaling motion, whether it's at 10, 20, 30 million in ARR, I would really be looking into these revenue intelligence platforms that can help you better predict where your revenue is going. Because in our world, that leads to really meaningful coaching conversations. This helps us get ahead of our business versus being highly reactionary. And I think reactionary in a sales world sucks because it comes across as very stressed out and frustrated sales teams and very angry clients, because a frustrated salesperson is probably going to just start reaching out to people and be like, are you going to buy this or not? It's a horrible customer experience. It's like, why aren't you going to add on content this quarter? It's like you're basically getting desperate. And so you're either selling stuff for ridiculous discounts or you're annoying the heck out of your customer. Either of those from a business perspective ain't a good thing. And so we wanted to immediately get ahead of this. Plan ahead. Don't just give me what your pipeline says. Let me help you predict where your pipeline is going to be based on the math and the algorithm that we can put in place about how the business has been performing for you. And I think that's been a huge, huge boon to our planning processes, our forecasting processes, so that I can be, from the beginning of the quarter, very accurate for the board. And then in turn, our team knows, like from, the first month of the quarter, here's the kind of gap that I'm actually facing. Like some of this is organically going to come, as it always does. Mm-hmm. But I'm actually still facing a $500,000 gap. How can I start thinking about, what customers are seeing huge value that could get more from our platform now? What other prospects, are interested that I should focus even more time talking to that could potentially convert this quarter versus 2 quarters from now? And so it just gives them more foresight, more time to plan, more time to execute.
Yeah, it creates a stressed out workforce. It can, like you said, it loses the credibility to the leader when they're presenting certain numbers and then it's coming in way below or way over what you're forecasting. And it also, from a planning perspective, you really, let's say it's an issue where if you're just focusing on pipeline that's going to close in the near term, you're not thinking about long term. Like, do we have 3 quarters ahead of time? Do we have enough, support from the top of the funnel with leads coming in order to support the forecast or the pipeline 3 months from now? And so that too much focus on short term, and it also drives bad behaviors like, shit, we have 3 weeks to go, we're way behind plan. Hit the phones, everybody, and then you start annoying the heck out of prospects too.
Yeah, exactly. I think the one part I would add to it, related to earlier, around talent development and creating a great culture, a company that people want to be at. If you're always in reaction mode, you're only ever focused on your day job. You're not building new skills. You're not learning new things. You're not involved in projects that are outside of just what your clients need immediately. And all of those things lead to people being stagnant within their careers. They're not building towards what's next, or even if you just want to be an amazing AE for the next decade, you're not continuously improving your skills. You're just always in sprint mode. And that's it's a really bad employee experience. But it also means you never feel like you have the time to be able to do the G2 community events that we put on all the time. Right? Like we want you to have a lot of value outside of your day job. We want you to enjoy spending time with your coworkers. And we want to provide opportunities like that through our G2 community events. Our ERGs do stuff all the time. Like, you got to have some peace of mind that you can unplug from making more dials, talking to more customers. And that's something we strive for a lot, to make sure that our team has that comfort and knows that they're totally fine. Like, even if you're behind on your quota a little bit, like, we're ahead of this, we'll get there, but you should be participating and having fun being just a G2 employee too, just a part of our overall community. And that's the other really sad part about it from a RevOrg perspective, is if you're behind the eight ball and you're not planning ahead, the team doesn't get to step outside of their job.
I have to ask you this question because you brought up software and how RevOps and revenue intelligence software helps you with planning and being more predictive. So what's it like buying software when you're G2? So do you just use the grids and just like, hey, let's go to the top right, highest on the top right quadrant? How do you guys go about buying software yourselves?
Yeah, well, we are voracious users of our own platform.
I would hope so.
If you're not listed on G2, if you're not showing up really well in our grid research, then you got a tough time selling to us. I would say one of the misnomers, at least this is my philosophy, is I'm not always going to buy just the companies in the top right quadrant, because there's a lot of really amazing disruptive companies that are out there that may not have the market presence yet, but they're building something really unique and really perfect for what I need right now. And so we're looking at all variables, and oftentimes we're doing a lot of custom queries within G2 to just see like who's going to be the best fit for us. Our size, our stage of company, our specific business value that we're looking for from the software. It may be who's in the top right. Like, those people we're absolutely going to look at. If you have an amazing reputation, if you are one of the top rated out there, we're going to consider you. But we're also looking at, who's flexing really well on index reports, who's one of those surging companies that's building an amazing reputation for themselves.
Momentum leader.
You should also be considering. And, it's table stakes to have a presence and to have your customers speaking for you to us. But then we do, kind of push folks and engage them in the usual bake-off process as well, because, we just published our Weir research, and, that says one thing is consistent. Even we as G2, like, we don't always buy into the marketing, and we don't always buy into what the salesperson's telling us. We want to see it live. We want to see what your customers say about you to make sure that you can actually walk the talk.
Yeah. All right. You mentioned the behavior report, and I was just reading it before we came online here. You just published the G2 buyer behavior report for 2021. Some incredible stats in here. I have one that stood out for me, but I'm going to save that because I want to hear from you, Mike. What stood out to you? I know your team put a ton of effort into this, and you interviewed, I guess, over 750 respondents, which is better than most political polls. And so, how did you? What were some of the biggest takeaways that you think folks on the revenue side should really think about? For someone wanting to take action on these findings, what's step one?
Yeah, to me, right, there's a lot in there, and reading the whole report. Hugely valuable, but the most startling and exciting / scary thing to me was how quick the process moves now. And I think that's, I was mentioning this before, in my prior life at LinkedIn, that we would do this, tech industry research almost every year. It was like every 12 to 18 months. And, for 15 years, from my time at LinkedIn, from my time at CDW, we kept seeing that, the buying process, it's so long, it's so drawn out. And obviously it was getting more and more complex as the buying committee kept getting bigger. More functions were involved, more seniority levels were involved. This most recent research shows it's all just move quickly. Doesn't matter if we're in the enterprise, right? Where we saw that 82% of enterprise buyers make a decision in under 6 months. And even over 50% make a decision in under 3 months. You think about the traditional research that I've always seen and that I've even done that said, hey, a buying process is 12 to 24 months. It's like, no. If we are not waking up to the fact that buyers are moving really quickly, then we're missing out. And so I look at, if I'm going to take action on something from this, I'm going to be talking to my CMO tomorrow to make sure that every time we see in-market buying signals, that we are immediately getting those companies into our marketing programs and making sure that we are in front of them, that we are showing them our thought leadership, that we are showing them the value of our particular solution, and that I'm thinking about when do I get my sales team to directly start reaching out to them as well, and how do we use the insights from any of the buyer intent type of signals that I'm seeing to engage them in a value-based conversation. Because that's the big thing is you got 3 months to help show you can be that right company to help them for their software need, and then you lose them for another 12. Now, the other part of this research that's also scary but good news is if you miss them the first time around, everybody is now reevaluating their vendors every single year. I've been in the tech industry long enough to know 20 years ago, hey, you knew you were good. You sold them, and for 5 years, they weren't going to bother changing anything. They were not going to rip and replace stuff. Well, in a cloud-based world, you could be ripped and replaced even in year one. So 1, get engaged quickly once you see they're in market. 2, make sure you're living up to that promise. And 3, if you did lose them last year, stay with them because you could get them next year or even sooner if whoever they chose isn't living up to their promises.
Yeah, to that point, I think it said here 70% of respondents say their company has a formal review process for software renewals. So assuming that most contracts are annual contracts and not 3-year contracts anymore, that means that puts the onus on customer success to really deliver and make sure people are happy. Wow, that's interesting. I think so this survey covered SMB, mid-market, and enterprise. What was the breakdown there?
Yeah, it ran the whole cross section. We wanted to make sure we had statistically valid samples on all fronts to be able to call that out. I don't have directly in front of me what the final statistics were, but we are representative of a global audience and then specific cuts for SMB, mid-market, and enterprise. Anybody that's listening that does want to get into the weeds, they're welcome to reach out to me, and I'll have your support team at G2, your client pod, get you all the specific cuts for you.
Yeah, Mike, you mentioned the finding buyer intent signals just a minute ago as one of the key takeaways that you're I'm going to talk to my CMO and make sure that as soon as we're seeing intent signals that we're in front of them with marketing, and then trying to figure out when sales gets involved. I know right now one of our clients is working with Jessica Condupa on your team to to look at that buyer intent data that you guys provide. I would love for you just to share what G2 is doing around that, because sure, it's not a sales pitch. This is actually breakthrough technology. It's giving people a look at what buyers are doing as they're researching way before they ever get in touch with your team. So how is this buyer intent data and the signals changing the game for sales teams?
Yeah, for G2's buyer intent, we want to provide a frictionless process. We want to provide a process that buyers have a lot more control, and that's why we create hand raiser moments, right? If you want a demo, like we're going to have demo requests on G2.com. If you want to download highly valued content, sometimes it will be gated, many times it will not be gated. And so what buyer intent allows us to do is still help the software companies know, what companies are in market, what do they care about right now, so that you're able to engage them at the right time about the right topic and show them, prove to them what your value is. In many cases, your customers are already speaking for you because they're on G2, they're reading the reviews, they're checking your ratings, they're seeing what's your ease of use, what's your value score, how do you compare to others within the market. And so we want buyer intent to be a part of that quote unquote frictionless process that helps bring awareness to companies of who should you be prioritizing having a direct conversation with today. But it's on their terms as well. Like, we're not forcing them to fill out forms and be a lead. We're letting them choose when the time's right for them. But in the meantime, we're giving you those signals to be able to engage with the contacts that you have over there. I think the types of signals that we're generating also help set some of that urgency. And if somebody's just looking at your profile, they're probably earlier stages, a little bit less urgency. They might be in that 3 to 6 months from a decision. Mm-hmm. But when we give you a signal that tells you you are specifically being compared against competitor B, C, and D, then they're in that final 3-month sprint, and you better act with urgency to create a conversation with that company to make sure that they know from your direct perspective, from a demo that you can provide them, here's how we shine. Here's what we have in the works within our product roadmap. I oftentimes do coach a lot of like the CMOs and CROs and our clients that I talk to. You should also be addressing things that are showing up as negatives within your product. This is definitely something that I ask my team to try to do is, hey, if we have some negative feedback, let's openly talk about what are we doing to address that part of our customer support process. Or we've made that fix already, right? And we're hoping to see really positive reviews in the future, but we do allow this now. We do have that functionality now. This integration is live now that had been called out before. And so we're equally showing what our customers love and talking about how we're addressing some of the areas that has been isolated that we can improve.
One more follow-up on that. So share as much as you want, but don't give away any company secrets. So when G2, I'm sure, uses these buyer intent signals, I think you said that earlier, if somebody is actually, I'm not sure if you guys would use it.
We do.
I'll cut this out. So G2, you guys use these buyer intent signals, and so if somebody is looking at a competitor and also comparing them against G2, is that the time when you have sales reach out and like what's the trigger point for your internal sales staff?
Yeah, that is definitely one of the times that we would reach out right away. If folks are searching for alternatives, if people are comparing us, mm-hmm. then we will reach out and talk to, if they're a client, we'll reach out to our primary contacts and just try to learn more. Like, hey, understand that the company is looking at some other options. Love to have a conversation. Don't know if it's you or if it's another one of your divisions. So help us understand what's going on, what we can provide. We want to help. We're happy to do demos. We're happy to talk through. We do data matches as part of our process mm-hmm. as well to just show some overlap between buyer intent audiences and like who shows up in CRM data and stuff at the client side. So we start offering some of our consultative services to help them in the process that they're in. And then I think it provides really valuable context in many regards to know, who are they comparing us against?
Yeah.
So we can then share. I think every company has their own value prop. So we just want to own our value. Say, hey, that's great. Like if you're comparing us against competitor X, like here's some of the things that we've heard from other companies, that we've heard from other clients about our value relative to them, right? But you're going to talk to them. You're going to form your own opinion. We just want to talk to you about, here's what we do really well. Here's what we're going to be doing more of in the future. Let's talk about whether or not that fits what you're looking for in this investment. And so those are a couple of signals that we take really seriously, and we don't we don't have SDRs reach out on those. We have the account owner reach out directly.
Oh, okay. And before you have the account owner, are there any signals that trigger a kind of marketing air cover, if you will, or any kind of like marketing activities?
Yeah, we have an awesome revenue marketing team who's really thinking about what is the headspace that a prospect or a client is in based on the different types of signals that are going on, and they're creating different prompts, right? Because sometimes there are signals, whether it's signals from G2's platform directly or others that are in the market with more third-party intent. But if folks are showing kind of like general patterns, like I've got a pretty good score from 1,000 companies that are looking at just intent data providers generally. Like, I've done some category research. I've looked at a couple profiles. Like, hey, we just want to put them into the marketing streams, and all of our thought leadership around how intent data can help supercharge your marketing demand gen engine, about how it can flow into your sales outreach efforts. We just want to make sure those companies and the decision makers based on our ICP are a part of the targeting to see our thought leadership. Mm-hmm. And so there's definitely ways that our revenue marketing team is saying, based on the signal, based on where we think they are on their journey, let me engage them with what I believe is the appropriate content to help them learn more. And if they're much later in the process, then it could create a lead gen form. It could create a demo request that we would reach out to them for. Like if you're doing a comparison of us versus others, we may ask for, hey, do you want a demo?
Yeah.
So we're always trying to align where the buyer is at with what the appropriate content and message is.
And certainly RevOps is key to orchestrating all those interactions, I'm sure. So I'm going to just finish up with the two questions I like to ask all our guests here on Go-to-Market Excellence. Who should RevOps report to, and what does your dream RevOps team look like?
Yeah, I love that RevOps reports to me. Mm-hmm. So it's integral. I honestly could not function as a CRO without a really strong revenue operations team. And so I want to make sure that they are 100% part of the revenue leadership team, that they are part of our vision, they are part of our execution path. And so in that regard, definitely want them reporting to me, the CRO, directly. When I look at the dream team, we cover a lot of different disciplines. Mm-hmm. And I do want to make sure that we have folks who are subject matter experts across each of those disciplines so that they can own their part of the business too. Right? We want to have individuals that are kind of traditional sales operations, like it's quota setting, it's book building, it's annual planning processes. But then we also want people that are, like our PMO that we're building out. I want the project management aspect of revenue operations. The people that can really do the deep diligence on some, smaller or even huge business ideas. Right? If we want to launch an all new product, I want my revenue operations team helping vet what is the go-to-market opportunity? How big is this market? Who would the ideal client be? How are we positioned to succeed there relative to others in the market? And that's something that I would task the revenue operations team to dig in on. And so we're balancing having the folks that are running the day-to-day business with people that are amazing at helping us build for future opportunity.
I love it. Mike, thank you so much for coming on the show. I've learned a lot today myself. I'm actually going to take action on some of the things that you said here just in the last 45 minutes. So appreciate that. Go out and get the G2 buyer behavior report. And if you're not on if you don't have an active listing on G2, make sure you're on there, because Mike will not consider buying your software unless you're on there. So thanks, Mike. Hope to catch up with you down the road. And thanks for spending some time on Go-to-Market Excellence.
Thanks, Dan. Appreciate it.